I sometimes say it's the later years, it's not the final years, and it's certainly not eternal years. And there was one of Tom Stoppard's characters, I think it was in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Aren't Dead, who said, I'm not sure about this eternity business. When will it ever end?
This episode is sponsored by Saxo Markets. Welcome to the Investing Insiders podcast, where we help you achieve financial well-being by making smarter money decisions. I'm Brianne.
And I'm Antonia.
And in this episode, we're unpacking the financial essentials you need to know to plan for later life. Joining us today is Sir Peter Thornton, KC. Sir Peter is a distinguished criminal and human rights lawyer, former senior circuit judge, and the first chief coroner of England and Wales. He is now a visiting professor at King's College London, who serves on the House of Commons Independent Expert Panel and works internationally to train coroners and judges. Sir Peter is also the author of The Later Years, The Simple Guide to Organising the Rest of Your Life, which won the Best Book for Pensions and Retirement in this year's inaugural Investing Insiders Financial Book Awards. Sir Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brianne. That's a very generous introduction. Thank you.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface. So first of all, a huge congratulations to winning the award. Our judging panel had exceptional feedback and high praise for your book. One of our judges said they were seriously impressed with the readability, structure, and considering the depth of topics covered, it was very succinct. And another judge said that they found it very simple and easy to read and that they're considering gifting it to some of their older relatives for Christmas. It's a practical guide and straight to the point and did exactly what it said on the tin.
Well, that's very flattering. Thank you. And I hope it does do what it says on the tin. It's there to help people. I want to focus people in their older years to be a little bit more organized about their life, which is good for them in their life, gives them a voice about their money and their property. And also, when they come to the end of their life, they're organized in a way which helps their family after they die, when things have to be sorted out. So it's a double whammy, really. Good for you and good for your family.
Definitely. I mean, I think it does an incredible job of breaking things down in easy, actionable steps. So the book itself offers valuable insight in everything from pensions and inheritance tax all the way to wills and avoiding scams. Could you tell us a bit more about what led you to write the book?
I sort of found that when family members died or when family members of friends died, they weren't quite sure what to do. They had a rough idea what to do. So I created a single sheet which tells you the 10 things to do after a death. 5 in 5 days and another 5, all on one sheet. And I handed that round to a few people. And then I got the idea that it's helpful to have that sort of information. You can find it somewhere, but at a difficult time, it's helpful to have everything simply in one place. So the book is about putting in one place all the things you could do. I'm not telling people what to do, except perhaps to make a will, but everything else is an option to consider. So I think having that in one place, being practical, explaining what it is, letting people read for themselves, that's the object of my book.
It's quite an undertaking to write a book. I mean, I how long were you working on the project for? Because it looks, I mean, looking at your background and your history and what you're doing now and everything like that, it seems like you've got an awful lot on your plate. So it must have been a sort of consideration. Am I going to actually get this done?
Yeah, it wasn't really. I mean, I started about 2017. And of course, the best time to write was during COVID. And quite sort of oddly, I didn't write at all during COVID, or not about this. So I put it on one side and then I came back to it. And I thought, well, I better finish this. It's a good thing to do. And I hope it will help people.
Well, I mean, by all accounts, from what our judges are saying, it's going to be extremely helpful to people.
Antonia, there are those people who are over 65, there are about 13 million in the UK. I mean, it's nearly 1 in 5 of the population. So state pension age now is 66. That's £125 billion a year for the government to pay out, the largest part of the state benefits budget, and increasing. And if you really want to be gloomy, you can say that, you can reflect that 75% of 75-year-olds in the UK have more than one long-term medical condition. But I may just start there with the gloomy, but I want to be very positive. I want the book to be positive. We can't just be gloomy. This is an important, not just a group of people, it's 13 million individuals, and everyone has, they're all different. Everyone has knowledge, experience, talent, friends, family. And the last census in the UK said that the over 65s were happier, less anxious, and have a greater sense of self-worth than any other age group. And those still working at 75, like me, reported the greatest job satisfaction of all ages. So we can be positive. Mark Twain said, age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Even better, Shirley Bassey said, you don't get older, you get better. So up the oldies, I say.
Yes. I mean, I always say, listen, don't worry about getting old, because the alternative to getting old is dying young. So actually, it's a privilege, and it is something that you should nurture and plan for and look forward to. Actually, I mean, I know because I do a lot of work on social media, and so I have a little bit of an insight into public sentiment, and some of the comments I read really just are crushingly disappointing. People going, "Oh, I'm not going to worry about that. Life's over by then." All of this sort of thing, and I'm like, no, those are golden years. This is what it's all about.
Enjoy them. Enjoy them.
Yes, exactly.
Your circumstances may not be brilliant. You may be a widow or a widower. You may have difficulties of health. We all have to expect that, I'm afraid. But, there's lots to be cherished.
And a large number of people from the UK actually retire abroad as well. I mean, we've got a massive retirement community in places like Spain and Portugal. So it's not outside of the realms of possibility to make dreams and ambitions a reality in retirement. So just that planning phase from the early years is so super important. When you wrote the book, did you have a target audience in mind, or?
The target audience was, in the first place, older people, or those who are getting older, who are reaching in retirement. Generally, the world talks about 65 as being the age of older age. Generally, that's the sort of standard age for that kind of consideration. So the over 65s, those who haven't got their lives quite as organised as they might be, but also the younger generation who had parents, relatives of that age and above who could help them sort things out a little bit. Obviously, that would help them after death too. So if all the finances are organised and not in a complete mess, then that makes life after death a lot easier. But so 2 generations, and my daughter, who's in her early 30s, read my book on Kindle, and she said, "Well, there's something here for all ages, actually." Stuff here about money, which I should start thinking about more. I should be saving more. I should be thinking about my pension more. I should be thinking about life insurance. These are, so it's any age, but more specifically, obviously, towards those who are, as the book title says, in their later years. I sometimes say, it's the later years. It's not the final years, and it's certainly not eternal years. And there was one of Tom Stoppard's characters, I think it was in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, who said, I'm not sure about this eternity business. When will it ever end? Anyway, so that's by the way. So it is the older generation in particular. And those are my friends who buy the book and think about the book. So I'm working my way through it. I'm doing one or two things that I've changed in my thinking, and I've considered one or two further options.
And when you say one or two things that the feedback that you've had from your generation, what can you give us examples of what those one or two things might be?
The obvious things, and perhaps where everybody would start, is having a will. Have a voice in a will where your money and possessions will go, because if you don't write a will, the state is likely to decide for you. So if, for example, you have a long-term partner, a dearly beloved friend and partner, but you're not married, you don't wish to be, you're not in a civil partnership, you don't wish to be, and you don't leave a will, that partner will not get anything. So the state will decide. If you have a spouse or a civil partner, the money will go to him or her first. But if you are unmarried, not in a civil partnership, zero. So that's a really important starting point. I mean, there are other advantages for being married, such as passing on inheritance tax exemptions, but that's a separate point. So first of all, a will. Make sure you write a will. And that's, I think, probably the only thing in the book where I say you must write a will. And really, you're having a voice. You're having a voice about your money and your possessions. You should have a voice about everything, as long as you can express that voice. But certainly a will expresses that voice. One of my favorite wills is that of the 16th century French writer François Rabelais, who said, I owe much, I have nothing, I give the rest to the poor. Anyway, so a will and obviously a lasting power of attorney. These are the obvious things, but I talk about them in the book and how you do them. There are two types, health and welfare and property and financial affairs. That's to express your voice through somebody you can trust, usually a child, but must be somebody you can trust as your attorney if you were to lose your mental capacity. Look, if you're going to have a stroke or heart attack and you're not up to making decisions for yourself, you need somebody you can trust to do that for you. Somebody you can trust to do what you would have wanted. And so they can think, what would Peter have wanted? What do I think Peter would? Yes, I think this is what he would want. So that's hugely important. And then you go on to look at other things, less to do with money, an advance decision to refuse treatment, an ADRT or a living will. And if in proper form, this is a legally binding document which gives you, and not the medics, a voice, if you want to have it, to refuse a life-sustaining treatment such as CPR or artificial ventilation. So you may be almost at the point of death, but you don't wish to be revived. You don't wish to have CPR, which can crush a frail and elderly person's ribs. Again, just having your voice being able to express what you want. Also, an advance statement which sets out your wishes. For example, if you had to be put into a care home, it sounds pretty dreadful, but you would still want to have, as it were, your say. A friend of mine did a wonderful sort of laminate, and her husband had to go into a care home. He had dementia, and she did a 2-page laminate, one on each side. And on one side it said, "This is all about him. I want to tell you about him and what he likes, what he dislikes, what makes him angry, what makes him happy. And on the other side, it was just, this is how his normal day is. And you might like to follow some of that. And that was wonderfully helpful. And then sort of finally in this category of getting a little bit more organized, a little memoir, just a bit about yourself, a bit about your relatives before they sort of disappear into the distance. Your children may not be interested right now, but 30 years later, they might suddenly think, oh, yes, Dad left a memoir. I wonder what didn't his grandpa work as a pilot on the Suez Canal? Actually, mine did. So they could look that up. They could find out about him. I put it in my little memoir. So, before all those details disappear for your family forever, just write a little memoir about yourself, and which you can pass on to your family and friends, who you are, what is your family history, what you've done in your life. So all of that is pretty basic. And I have had friends say, well, I haven't thought about LPAs before, but I do see the need for it now. So I will do one. They cost, actually, it's just gone up. They were £82 each. They are now £92 from November. But they are important because sadly, you don't necessarily know what's around the corner for you as you get a bit older. And I put all of that stuff in, I call it bluntly, my death file. Right? Let's be blunt about this. This is for use for everybody when I no longer have capacity or I'm dead. So in my file, mine is not digital. You can join a digital company. There are online companies like Smart Onion, for example. They all say it's as safe as houses, and it may be, it may be not. But is it any less safe or more safe than my pink file, which is on my shelf, which is a paper file, because I'm of that generation, really. And my family know what's in the file. They know where the file is. They can read it anytime, and it's there to help them when I die. So, for example, what my bank accounts are, details of those. My passwords are separate. Okay, so, in case anybody's looking through the window. So they will have immediate access to the sort of stuff that they will need on my death. What happens to the bank account? Can I get money out of the bank account to pay for the probate? All of that sort of stuff, which is really fiddly and difficult. And it will help them if I have organized my bank accounts a little bit more. I've got rid of, for example, that £125, which has been lingering in the Building Society for 35 years and should have come out and closed. We don't want to have to fiddle about with stuff like that. Get a little bit organized. So if you're a little bit more organized, you've expressed your voice, your individual voice, your personal voice, your wishes. You've thought about it. You've done it. You've put your affairs in order. You know what's what for your own peace of mind because you've checked and written it down. You've checked you haven't got that £125 in the Building Society, not doing anything which needs to be closed, although that's not as easy as it might be sometimes. And also you will know that those who are left behind will be helped by what you are doing. A bit of organisation will help you and will help them a lot. And there's even a bit of research which says this came out in September, that being more organized and responsible is good for healthy aging. Now, I don't know how good that is or how valuable that is, but somebody has said it, and no doubt there may be something in that.
Well, I think having your affairs in order helps with sort of anxiety a bit, doesn't it? It just makes you feel a little bit more organised and calm. And
Yes, instead of, well, for our generation, more than yours, you two, instead of having piles of paper all over the floor, oh, I haven't put that away and I haven't put that in order, just a little bit of organization will give you peace of mind, I think.
In creating your, final wills and wishes and making sure that you have that for people to understand what you'd like in later life if things do change, how early is the right time to start thinking about it and putting it together? Because it could potentially be quite an extensive document, even though you could condense it. But when's the right time to start putting something like that together?
Anytime you feel up to it. I give lots of lists. At the end of each chapter, I have top 10 tips, so all on one page. And I suggest, well, don't do everything at once. You'll go mad. Just do a little bit now and then when you can. Obviously, as you get older, these things become more important. And perhaps there's a little bit more pressure as you get past the 65-year point. But any time will do.
I went through the process quite recently, actually. We'd done something very rough, my husband and I, when we first got together and had the children. But your personal situation changes as you progress through life. And I think this is another area which people don't realise, is that all of these things need updating. So, they have a shelf life. And to the point that you just made, we got a lawyer in who suddenly turned around and went, you two aren't married, and that's going to be a massive issue in inheritance tax, which, I mean, of course I should have been thinking about because I'm in finance, but I'm like the hairdresser with bad hair. So I sort of went, oh gosh, right. Have you got time this weekend to nip off down to the registry office? Let's get that done. And once the wheels are in motion and you have sorted it all out, it does feel a lot better. But there is a massive gap that you can leave. And actually, at a time when people are mourning, it's a very difficult period for people to be taking care of financial matters and legal matters and things like that. So it is really important.
Yes, some people who are mourning like to be very busy and like to do this stuff and put it all together and organize it. Others don't. They just can't manage at all. So we react in very different ways about this. So you need to be prepared for those who find it difficult to be organized at that difficult time. And just one thing, if I could just add on this, you're quite right about updating. It's very important because your will, for example, may have changed. I'm not suggesting you, Antonia, in any shape or form, but you may have divorced or separated, or there may now be stepchildren in the family. All of these things may need to be reconsidered. Just think about that will that you wrote 15 years ago and think, oh my goodness, no, I've got to update that. I've got to change that. But just one final point on this, and it should never be forgotten that really you should be having, you as the older person who have put your affairs much more in order, should be having the discussion with your family about what you have done and why you have done it. Children don't often want this discussion. They don't want to talk about your death or what happens before or after your death. That can be very difficult for them. So, there may be different ways of doing this. I know there are different ways of doing this. People have told me. You may have to wait for the right time. The little conversation comes up. You know what I've left in my will, don't you? It's pretty straightforward, and it's in the pink file. But, why I've done this is for this reason. It may be straightforward, it may be a little bit complicated, but a little bit of explanation in life is going to make it a lot easier for them after life. So that discussion. Don't take the George Burns route. He said happiness is having a large, loving, caring, close-knit family in another city. Take the discussion route with your family.
Yeah, that seems like very sound advice. And also, I think that it's sort of important to stress that it's never too soon to start planning these things as well. And certainly when it comes to thinking about retirement, the sooner the better for everybody.
Yes.
And this is one of the issues that the country is having at the moment, isn't it? With underfunded retirements. But I mean, for your generation, Peter, were you encouraged to save into private pensions or?
Absolutely not. Never did. I mean, when I started, my thinking about money was completely hopeless. I was paying rent. I was living in a shared flat, modest amount of rent, bit of money coming in as income. Just didn't think about saving, didn't think about anything. But gradually one understands these things. So I was a self-employed barrister. And first of all, you have to pay your tax as the tax year comes round. So I started putting some money away from my tax, which I never knew exactly how much it was going to be because my income was up and down all the time. Sometimes, you get paid very nicely. Sometimes you don't. You wait 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years before you're paid. So you might expect that money to come, and it hasn't come in that tax year. So you're up and down with your tax payments. So I put my money in a sort of building society account. In fact, I put my money into Northern Rock at one point, which went bust in the 2007-8 crisis. Fortunately, I got my money out before it went bust and was split up and divided. But I'd also put money when I was a youngish barrister, and I did always take financial advice, which I think is very valuable. Even if you haven't got a great deal, it encourages you to save, pensions, life insurance, all of that sort of stuff and how to do it. Although there's much more information these days about these things and how to do it online. But I also put money into Equitable Life, which everybody thought was absolutely sound as a bell back in those days. It was mutual life insurance, but it provided pensions and guaranteed pensions. And of course, it could never maintain that forever. And so Equitable Life went bust and I had to get my money out and I lost quite a bit. I think at least 30% of that money was lost because of early withdrawal, but it was inevitable. So obviously I have always tried not to keep all eggs in one basket. Property, if you can afford it, obviously, if you can get a mortgage, they're a lot cheaper when I first got a mortgage than they are today.
Yes, certainly we have it a little bit tougher these days.
I can't believe the sort of mortgages people have. Somebody says, well, I've got a mortgage of this amount. Oh, incredible, How are you going to survive?
I think it's getting even worse as well. I mean, there's 100% mortgages out there now. And you're lucky if you can pay off the interest. So it's quite a dangerous area, actually. But equally, people are caught a little bit between a rock and a hard place because it's incredibly difficult to get on the property ladder at all or to save the kind of money you need to buy a house. I mean, when my parents once told me what they bought their first property for, it was something like £5,000.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, that doesn't happen these days.
Yeah, the market's a lot tougher now.
Mortgages now are shocking to behold, and you do think about, younger people and their struggle, if they wanted to get on the ladder, and whether rents are going up beyond their means, and whether they're having to move out into something smaller and cheaper. It's very difficult. And goodness.
Well, I think that's the issue as well, is that rent is now becoming such a massive percentage of average salary, that it's what we're witnessing these days, I think, is a lot of the sort of what we call the boomerang generation, people who move out of home and then move back in again because they can't afford it out there in the wild. And I'm sort of expecting it from my own children a little bit, because I think it is just becoming so difficult now.
Somebody on the radio the other day, she said, well, I've got a nice terrace house in London. I live in the middle. My working children live upstairs, and my aged mother lives downstairs. You know, that's a sort of way of life. Maybe a good thing. Perhaps she wants more space. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of generations ago, that was quite a normal setup, wasn't it, for intergenerational living? And there are some cultures where that's still very much a thing, and it means that the younger generations can look after the older generations. And I mean, as long as you're not tearing each other's heads off and fighting all the time, then I can see that there's certainly a lot of financial advantages to that, and there's the care advantage to that as well, because later life care is becoming so expensive.
Well, one of the things I talk about in my book is how to stay independent longer, how to live at home longer, where you probably do wish to live. Some people talk about living on the level, but my physio tells me it's better to have stairs in your house, so you keep going. But I
think there's probably a bit of truth in that.
Very good exercise, the stairs, the old stairs, for the aging knees and all of that. But I do talk about, for example, when you should perhaps think about downsizing, and you've got a property which you've had for a long time, which you may have bought like me when it was a lot cheaper. Downsizing, but also thinking about you know, you may have a modest property, but you've got a spare room, thinking there are all sorts of schemes now, which are about sharing with, say, a student or a young person. So the rent may be reduced because they might help you on one or two things. It might be, you know, tech stuff, or even things like shopping.
Okay, so that's interesting. I've not heard of that before, actually, and that seems like a really good idea, because a lot of people do struggle financially in their retirement years. I mean, certainly if you're on the state pension, then you're really looking at a financial struggle. So little tips like that are great for how to bring in a little bit of extra help and a little bit of extra money. Just whatever sort of tries to smooth it all out a little bit.
Yes, I mean, obviously that can be quite difficult, but there are all sorts of charities which will do matchmaking, matching an older person with a younger person so that they can fulfill that role. So, as you say, a little bit of income and a little bit of help at the same time. That's pretty good. That's a double whammy. I like that. There's a scheme in Leeds. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's that will match you. It's a matching scheme, which I think is run by the local council, which will help.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people in retirement at the moment are quite property rich, actually. So yeah. They're sitting on sizable properties, but don't necessarily aren't emotionally in a spot where they want to downsize. So something like that's a really good sort of middle ground.
Yes. I mean, there are various stages, and there are stages before a care home. It may come a time when a care home is necessary. And there's some really good websites actually about care homes. But there are sort of halfway houses too, where you can go to a community where it's shared, you have your own property, but it's shared. Or you can have a couple who are in a community where one is receiving care and the other is not receiving care, but they're still living together, or more or less together, at least on the same patch, and that can work very well. So, that's another step, maybe trying to maintain your independence, but having to have some assistance. So I think of my mother-in-law, who lived to 98, and so, first of all, it was visiting carers, then it was live-in carers, then it was steps to try and keep her at home and be independent, and then a hospital bed in the living room. And after a while, these things get too difficult, so then it has to become a care home. So, there are other steps in between as well.
This episode of the Investing Insiders podcast is sponsored by Saxo Markets. Saxo provides access to a broad range of global assets through a sophisticated trading platform. You can trade US stocks from as little as $1 per trade and UK stocks from $3 per trade. Please remember that all investing involves risk. The value of your investments can go down as well as up, and you could get back less than you invest. Terms and conditions apply. Visit Saxo Markets to learn more. I think those are all exceptionally valuable points. And I suppose doing a little bit of retrospective thinking, in the early stages of your career, how much did you plan for the future? And the sort of stage that you're at now, how much does that reflect the planning that you did and the steps that you took in the early stages of your career?
Yes, well, I think I took steps gradually and slowly. And being self-employed as a barrister makes it a bit more complicated. You don't have a regular salary coming in at the end of the month. Sometimes you've got money, sometimes you have no money. And so a bit of planning helped. So gradually I saved more and put it in different places, and life insurance, and listened to my financial advisor, who would give me advice. And generally that worked pretty well. So much of that, which I rely upon today in my later years, is as a result of that advice and a little bit of planning as I went along. But bearing in mind, don't keep all eggs in one basket, which seems to me to be very sensible advice, and everybody seems to say that. And as I've said earlier, I had money in Northern Rock and that went bust. I had money in Equitable Life and that went bust. So it was necessary to have money elsewhere as well to keep that up. I'm not suggesting that your company, no, I don't mean your company, I mean the company you invest in is necessarily going to go bust, and you need to worry about that all of the time. But obviously be careful about where your money is and keep thinking about it every now and then.
I think being engaged is such an important point as well. So thinking about putting your, investments in different places and diversifying, but also not being too attached when things don't necessarily turn out the way that you want. So as you were saying, having the sort of issues with Northern Rock and Equitable Life, it wasn't necessarily the end of your financial journey. You probably just learned a lot and kept on going with your financial planning.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment.
And with regards to your confidence with money, were some of the lessons that you had during your career, are they things that you picked up from things you spoke about with your family, or was it solely based on the financial advice you received?
A bit from my family, certainly from my father. And I was lucky that they were always there if needed. Generally they weren't needed, but it's nice to have that backup. And you're lucky if you do have that backup. I set out in my book a few things about planning for the future, which I think are quite helpful just to think about Have you put your bank statements and household bills in accessible order? Have you put money from low income accounts into something that produces decent interest? Do you have sufficient life insurance? And as you get older, have you considered inheritance tax planning? At least thinking about it. Some people don't want to. They say, I'll pay my taxes, whatever they are. Others say, I will do what I can to minimize that tax. Are there good financial reasons why you could consider marrying your partner? Certainly there are. Is there a property and financial affairs lasting power of attorney in place? That's pretty necessary. Could you get part-time work if you looked for it and wanted it as a person who has retired? Are there things you can do? There are many things older people do as volunteers, like grandchildren, caring for others. Have you worked on paying off loans or reducing credit card debts, something to get out of the way? By being organized, I say, you should be able to reduce your worries and enjoy life more. And I certainly end up in that financial chapter by saying, give yourself a treat every now and then. I'm sure you can afford something. If it's only something small, that's very important, a treat, something to look forward to. And so I've got top 10 tips for money. Look after your money, manage it and organize your records for easy access and for overall planning. Simplify your financial arrangements so that you have greater control over your money. Check your pensions and benefits so that you get full entitlement. Make your savings work for you. Take sound advice. Check your income against your outgoings and organize a budget plan if that's something you feel like doing. So particularly saying, well, what do I have to spend every month, and what have I got left? Can I go on that holiday, or would that be too extravagant? Consider ways to reduce your outgoings, such as switching utility service providers and insurance companies. Hard work, but quite often beneficial. In taking financial advice, only trust those who can be safely trusted. That's very important. For example, a properly regulated independent financial advisor. If you have a debt or money problem, do not ignore it. Do not sweep it under the carpet. Deal with it quickly. Don't ignore letters. Take advice quickly and avoid credit card debt. That can mount up very quickly. Check your bank statements and credit card statements regularly to check for false, scam, or incorrect entries. I think my wife had suddenly a whole range of insurance. They all looked perfectly proper. Insurance companies charging her money, and they were all false.
Yes, I mean, I had it on my own bank account. Actually, I check it every month, and one month I checked it, and there was a whole bunch of payments amounting to £4,000 to a company called Hungry Panda, which was a takeout service up north. And I was like, I haven't taken out anything anywhere. So it happens. And it's easy for you not to notice because they had taken out tiny, tiny little amounts each time. There wasn't like one big amount. It was just loads of little ones. So it is a bit of a slog to deal with.
All from a respectable looking company,
yes,
apparently.
Yes, exactly.
Which is something you might see on your bank statement and think, I can't remember what I got that for, but maybe that's correct. When it turns out not to be correct.
Exactly. It's very sound advice that everyone should be checking.
And finally, make room for treats, as I said, because money isn't just for saving. So, I mean, quite often financial advisors say, well, older people probably have saved actually too much money. I mean, plenty don't have enough. That's true, but some have plenty more, which they should probably be spending part of, at least, to enjoy what they can.
Yeah, that's a very good point as well, because, and actually that's where financial advice can be invaluable, because it's a very difficult thing for people to work out on their own, how much money they need to navigate anything that life might throw at them, like long-term care or anything like that. But how much is excess and can be released from the coffers, so to speak. So I actually do know a few people whose financial advisors have gone, right, loosen the purse strings, let it go a little bit, maybe even give some of it away to your children, because you're holding on to too much. And that can be a very human instinct to hold on. But actually, it can be quite liberating just to know where you are, where you stand, and what you can let go of.
Yeah.
One thing that it will be great to touch upon is throughout your book, you do mention and talk about the importance of health and making sure that you maintain it and make sure it's part of your financial planning and later life planning. Could you tell us a little bit more about the different aspects of health that are important to nurture and what it looks like to make sure that you've got something in the works to keep it maintained?
Yeah, I mean, I focus a little bit. I'm not a health expert. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a, gerontologist. So I rely upon what researchers and experts say. If I think it looks good, it doesn't always look good, but when it does look good,
it has to fit into your lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. Physical health is very important. Physical activity of some sort, however little, although more is better. I think this year there was some research that just 1 minute a day of incidental activity, as they call it, even broken into short bursts such as carrying heavy shopping bags, could help. And reduce the risk of dying within 6 years by 38%. Well, that sounds a bit optimistic to me, but it makes the point that even a little bit of physical activity is good. The NHS says you should aim for 2.5 hours a week, moderate intensity workout. Physical health also includes, obviously, healthy eating, good sleeping, no smoking, and less alcohol. Not perhaps Tommy Cooper's health advice, which was, I'm on a whiskey diet, I've lost 3 days already. So physical health, mental health is obviously the second part of health. Work, activities, mind pursuits, learn a musical instrument or a foreign language. Had a meal with some friends the other day. One was, I had a meal with some friends the other day, and one was doing Italian classes, and the other was doing Greek classes. I thought, God, that's impressive. So anything that provides mental stimulus and often has social connotations too. And so the third part, and what people have been saying recently, perhaps the most important part of health is social health. Interacting with other people. I've been reading 2 books, or I have read 2 books on age and aging, one by an immunologist writing about the different ways we die and how best to avoid them, the other by a psychologist assessing the nearly 80-year-old Harvard study of adult development. And both emphasize the importance, if not the greatest importance, of social health. Improving your social fitness by connecting to other people, having a better, happier, even longer life through good social relationships. There's been another book by an immunologist since then who says the same thing. Also another research study written up this year which emphasized that a group of so-called superagers in their 80s scored particularly well on memory tests, as good as those in their 50s, because they concluded they were particularly sociable and relished activities, even though some had negative health indicators such as smoking and drinking. I'll see you in the pub afterwards. So even though technology can keep us away from others so that we're not actually meeting face to face, Teams and Zoom and so on, it is said by experts, be beneficial by keeping up contact, even just by email. It is some beneficial social conduct. Oscar Wilde wasn't too keen on any of this health stuff. He said, to get back to my youth, I would do anything in the world except take exercise, get up early, or be respectable. So I'm not asking people in their 80 years to be respectable. That's their choice. But physical, mental, and social health, particularly social health, is good. I've just had lunch with 3 people I worked with in Japan in 1969.
Wow.
So, a great pleasure. But also it should be good for me that I'm keeping up my social health with old friends.
And also, I mean, to tie it into your book as well, Peter, the mental health is intrinsically linked to financial health, the research has found. So, hopefully your book can sort of really help people in this stage of life and to stay on top of their health.
I hope so. I'm just not telling people what to do, but what they could do if they thought about it and wanted to do it. That's their choice.
Well, I'll definitely be giving it to my retired relatives. I've got parents in their 80s and in-laws, and a great aunt who's now 104.
Congratulations.
Might be a bit late for her.
Yes.
Hopefully she's got her affairs in order.
Yes, I hope she has a glass of sherry before lunch.
Yes, exactly. That all ties into mental health.
The thought that you may end up in a care home, which will cost you an absolute fortune very, very quickly. So the balance is, how much do I have to keep available for that, and how much can I spend time enjoying spending? So that's all quite difficult. I know we're getting towards the end of a very enjoyable podcast, I hope.
Yes, it's been fantastic.
Been absolutely fascinating.
But I sometimes go back to my youth and remember Roger McGuff, one of the Liverpool poets, writing about death in his inimitable style. Let me die a young man's death, not a clean and in between the sheets holy water death, not famous last words, peaceful out of breath death. When I'm 73 and in constant good humour, may I be mown down at dawn by a bright red sports car on my way home from an all-night party. Well, sadly, from my point of view, there are not so many all-night parties now.
We'll have to fix that,
None at all. So it's more time for a little quiet reflection, or to rewrite the lyrics of a hit song in memory of an old client of mine, Marianne Faithfull. This is the evening of the day. I sit and watch as years go by. It is true that in youth we sometimes run into difficulties, and in old age, difficulties sometimes run into us. Health mostly, but sometimes things like tech stuff too. As someone said, I hate living in the 21st century. I'll never get to heaven because I won't remember the password. But never mind, it's not how old you are, but how you are old. Living life as best we can, whatever the circumstances. That's my motto.
I love that. It's not how old you are, but how you are old. That's perfect. Yeah, very good. Very good. Love it.
Amazing. Well, Sir Peter, thank you so much for joining this episode. This has been an incredible conversation and we've really enjoyed talking to you. We'll be sure to link your book in the show notes so that everybody can find it. And just spread the invaluable knowledge of organisation and financial planning for your later years.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure. And I have been very fortunate to receive the award which you have given me for my book. Thank you very much.
Yeah, honestly, it was so well deserved. And it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation and just sort of lean into some of your experiences and stories. And really, really good podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining our Investing Insiders podcast. If you like the episode, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on your platform of choice. For the latest money news and deals, you can sign up to our weekly newsletter at investinginsiders.co.uk/newsletter-page. We've also got a suite of guides, tools and calculators on our website at investinginsiders.co.uk. You can also keep up to date with us on TikTok, Instagram and YouTube. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode.